if we don't operate now, he will be dead in a week.
Okay. All right, and then do we ever actually look into the camera?
Only if you're doing like an office, like.
But as an intro.
Yeah, as an intro, obviously.
Yeah, okay.
Keep this in the intro, please.
Welcome. I'm Dr. Sooj. I'm here with Alex Paternott, one of my dear friends. He goes by the name Quipster, which we will touch into. But this is currently our third attempt and our 7th hour at trying to film episode 1 of my podcast. We've had lots and lots of technical issues, but thankfully you're a pro at all of this.
Yeah, we're currently sitting in my studio, so...
We tried to do it virtually and it just didn't work. But yeah, so I'm Dr. Sooj, and this is episode 1 of my new podcast. It's so new that we don't have a name for it yet, despite however many times we've been trying to film it. But yeah, Alex is a dear friend of mine. We've known each other since we were 3 years old. We have lived across the road from each other for 15 years while we were growing up.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's a really interesting thing, actually. So you might not notice this at home, but we're actually sitting close enough that as we're both wearing shorts, we're currently mingling leg hair. Fantastic. That's exactly how close you want to be to your friends. Especially in the summer when it's really hot.
yeah, I can't wait for our knees to start sweating.
Keep this in. Please keep all this in.
Right, yes, so let's get started. So the reason that Alex is guest number 1 is because when we were younger, Alex was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis when we were teenagers. And I've seen the journey from the multiple operations, the effect that it's had on your life. But what I haven't ever fully understood is the effect that chronic illness has played on your life. And we've only really started to delve into it on a personal level over the last couple of years. And I would just love to explore that further. And I think it'd be really helpful, particularly for people who have had colitis or inflammatory bowel disease so they can understand a bit more about what they're feeling is probably normal. And also to hopefully educate the public and other doctors, because I've never been through a chronic illness myself. No one in my immediate family has. We're very lucky, but we can
explore it here a lot better.
We can explore it here, exactly, and take Alex's expertise. But first of all, let's talk about why you're named Quipster.
Yeah. So online, I'm known as Quipster. And the reason for that is because I make a lot of content online, mainly to do with a board game, essentially called Warhammer 40,000. And I make enough content that I was just like, okay, Alex is a very common name, so I want like an internet name. Yep. So I went on a hip-hop name generator, and I just clicked the button a few times, and I think it was like Radiophonic Quipster or something came out. I was like, aha, Quipster, I can use that. So yeah. There are many Alexes in the world, but only one Quipster. Okay, no, actually, I say this, we talked about this earlier. I didn't know this when I picked the name, but Quipster is also the name of an Austrian, alternative clothing brand. My ex is German, and she walked past one once, and she sent me a picture what the hell is this? And I was just like, oh, yeah.
Well, they named it after you, right?
Yeah, they really didn't. But yeah, I actually have one of those T-shirts now. Maybe I'll do a collab with them or something. But yeah, that's how Quipster started. And yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride ever since. The reason why I started making that kind of content and why I got back into playing the game Warhammer 40,000 is actually all connected in chronic illness stuff.
I actually had no idea that it was Warhammer 40,000. I thought it was just Warhammer.
There's 2 different kinds, it's a whole thing.
Fine. So let's just jump straight into it. Tell us, what was your journey from symptoms when you were first diagnosed and then what happened thereafter?
Well, let's start right back at the beginning. So I was 13 and I was basically like any normal 13-year-old nerd. Played a lot of PlayStation. When I wasn't stealing
A lot.
When I wasn't stealing your PlayStation games. And so yeah, playing a lot of PlayStation, wasn't that sporty until a little bit later. I played a bit of rugby at school, That was cool. I was a winger. I was fast. But yeah, I was at boarding school, and the reason I was in boarding school was because my whole family had moved to India for my dad's job, and he worked for AstraZeneca, and so big pharma. Can't wait for the conspiracy theories in the comments.
Don't mention that here, because people. I already get so much shit about just being a doctor.
Oh wait, hang on. I'm one of these crisis actors. Is that what they're called? Christ.
Oh no!
It doesn't pay me enough to be a crisis actor.
Don't say that.
But yeah, I wish you paid me at all for this.
Considering how long it's taken to even get to this point, if this fails, that's the end of the podcast.
Oh yeah, completely. But yeah, so I was in school, and my parents were in India, my brother and my sister as well, and I stayed behind to go to boarding school to do my GCSEs and do my exams and stuff. And I would go and visit them in India every holiday. So Easter's, Christmas, whatever. And I ended up getting 3 really, really bad bouts of food poisoning. And that triggered this colitis. I was very ill on and off, throughout year 9 with, various colds and flus and food poisoning. And then the third one just triggered it. And I got this food poisoning, came back to the UK, and then I had a period of time, it was about a week, where I was basically shitting a lot of blood. As a 13-year-old, you do sort of think to yourself, like, this is unusual. Normally the blood stays inside your body. So, not this time. And so, yeah, I went to we call it the SAN, the medical center, and I said to them, because I had a good relationship with the nurses there at this point, I was just like, hey, I'm going to the loo like a lot. I think I need to talk to someone about this. And they said, okay, is there blood when you go to the loo? And I was like, yes, there is. I was so glad they asked that question, actually, because being a 13-year-old kid, it's not something you want to say. So if you're asked, you can just say yes. So that was actually really nice. And then I started going away for tests. I look back at this time and I realize there's a lot of stuff that I don't remember. I don't remember being diagnosed. I don't remember having the conversation with the doctor, you have colitis. I think I might, but I'm not sure. Because, at the time, I kind of it was also new and so scary.
And there'd be a version of it in your head,
Yeah.
which is what you remember, whether or not that's exactly what happened, but that's your version of events.
Exactly. And so I remember getting my first colonoscopy.
Exciting.
Wild adventure. Honestly, the worst part about getting a colonoscopy isn't the colonoscopy, it's the prep beforehand. Because if you've got a colon still, it takes so long. Because you've got to take all the Senecot and clear out
all of the stuff and if you don't do it properly the first time,
oh yeah,
then you have to. They'll do the colonoscopy, but then the report will just say inadequate bowel prep.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Repeat.
Yeah, and the worst thing is for that 24 hours, you can't really eat anything either. So you're just sitting there hungry and bored and just like, oh, I hate this. This is awful.
By the way, it's just drinking loads of laxatives.
Yeah, so many. You're just like, oh God, this is horrible. So the prep is the worst bit. Kind of spoilers for a little bit ahead. Now that I don't have a large intestine, it's actually way easier for a colonoscopy anyway. But so I had that first colonoscopy. And afterwards, I think I remember the doctor basically saying, okay, here are a bunch of drugs. We think you have this. I was like, okay. So I just took all the drugs. It was mesalazine, prednisolone, maybe 1 or 2 other things. I think in those early days, I must have been on about 25 pills in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Sounds about right. I'm very organized with these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think my record was probably about between 25 and 28 pills in the morning, and then 3 more mesalazine at lunch and 3 more mesalazine at dinner.
This now makes it more sense now, because there was a point where me and your brother were going to the gym, and we were using some, we just take like multivitamins and omega-3 tablets.
Was that what they're calling it now?
And look at me.
You look great.
We were taking like multivitamins and things like that, right? And vitamin D tablets.
We smashed the shit out of fish oil, especially.
Yeah, and what was incredible was you just put like 5 fish oil tablets, swallow them like that.
Yeah.
In one go.
Yeah.
And now this makes sense.
Yeah, I was on so many pills that like it got to the point where I could take those 25 dry at the same time. It's like, oh, let's go.
So horrible.
Not bad for a year 10. So yeah, I had all of that, and I was kind of just getting on with what I had to. I had some pretty, there's going to be a lot of this, some pretty shitty experiences, literally. I remember I was in the Combined Cadet Force, so CCF, and I remember we went on this like military exercise thing on an actual army base, and I definitely shit myself when we were there, and that was embarrassing to deal with, because you're in an unfamiliar location with not a lot of your own stuff, surrounded by people who, at the time, no one knew anything about what I was going through. Being in boarding school, or school in general, I think boarding school is a very high pressure environment. You don't want to admit any kind of weakness to anyone around you. And being that young and being in school doesn't lend itself to being in an environment where you feel supported.
Yeah, or safe or protected.
Yeah, absolutely not. No one knew, honestly, to this day, like what happened. I remember seeing a buddy of mine who was in my boarding house years later. This must have been 2017. And I had a chat with him, and I finally explained, like, look, these are the surgeries I had, this is the condition I had. And he was just like, oh, I just thought you had really bad food poisoning the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about this a bit more later, but people don't understand the shame and the secrecy that is part of this, especially when you first get the condition. I've got a good friend of mine, who I've done a podcast with about this kind of stuff, who also has ulcerative colitis, but he was diagnosed when he was 25, 26, so much later in life. And he got diagnosed in the lead up to his marriage, to his wedding. And he didn't tell his wife for a year.
Wow.
Like, throughout the whole wedding prep, he was bleeding a lot. And he was ill enough to the point where, on their honeymoon, he couldn't get out of bed. But she didn't know. And she just thought he was being an asshole, just like not wanting to do things. But he was so ill, he couldn't do anything. And it took him a long time to be able to like say anything. And it was only really when I was able to have a chat with him, we had a long discussion about it, and he was able to like open up. And I got a message from his wife afterwards, and she was just like, he's never talked about this in this way to anyone. Because it's hard to admit, and it's hard to talk about, because no one likes to talk about shitting their guts out. It's embarrassing. I have had a lot of practice. That's why I'm in this position. So...
Well, you've been dealing with this on and off for 20 years.
Oh, don't say that, I feel so old. But you're right. It's gone to the point where I have a script that I tell people. A way of explaining my condition, because people don't understand the degree to which having an illness like this affects your entire life. And not just affects your life, but how you interact with the world around you. So you have extra layers of things you're constantly thinking about. So like, for example, I'm always thinking, okay, when I'm going to a place, what's the loo situation there like? What have I eaten today? Like, where am I going to be in 3 hours? Where am I going to be in 6 hours? What is my energy level going to be like? Am I going to be in a safe environment? Do I have all the stuff I need on me?
Is that now what happens, or is that what was happening
now? And this is actually better than how it used to be, because I used to have, we'll come onto this in a little bit, I used to have a colostomy bag. There are a lot of accoutrements that you need for a colostomy bag to just carry around with you. And I hated it. Because for a lot of people, a colostomy bag is like freedom, because you spent so long up to that point having a really terrible life, being unable to go anywhere or do anything, being shackled to wherever the nearest loo is. And I've been there. Like, I have been there. I know what it's like. But my story of getting the colostomy bag was quite a bit different to a lot of people, because for me, it was an emergency. So yeah, let's go back to that part of the story. So I, in year 9, was diagnosed. So the age of 13, 14. Then about halfway through year 10, so I must have been about 15 at the time, my condition became extremely aggressive. Oh, we should probably explain this. So if you're out there and you don't know what ulcerative colitis is, it's, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, it's when your large intestine isn't recognized as part of your body, so your immune system attacks it. And so I got a really, really bad flare-up in year 10, middle of year 10. And it got bad enough that I had to go to hospital. And not only did I have to go to hospital, my mum had to carry me into hospital. Honestly, it's some of the most pain I've ever, I think anyone could experience. Because you're literally having one of your organs liquefied by your immune system. It's not a particularly fun experience, I can tell you that. Hang on, dramatic pause for water. My intestine was feeling so painful at that point, so sensitive, that I remember my dad driving me to the hospital once, and I could feel every single bump in the road on the inside of my body.
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
It wasn't great. So I was in hospital for, God, it must have been from February, I think, onwards. And my condition just got worse and worse and worse. Prednisone, you'll know this, there's like a protocol of drugs that a patient will be taken through. If this one doesn't work, okay, we'll go to the next one, the next one, the next one. And there's like an actual set protocol, right? And I assume that's the same for a lot of conditions. Yeah. And so I sort of went through the protocol and they gave me every drug on it. So prednisone stopped working. Okay, next one. It got to the point where they had me on cyclosporin. I don't know if you had to give anyone cyclosporin?
I have written it on a drug chart. I've never been the one I would never be the one to initiate it, because it's a specialist drug. So when I was a junior working in hospitals, yeah, I have prescribed it on a drug chart, but not. I would never have initiated it. I would never have. I mean, the way it affected you, I would never have actively seen that, because it's usually people who have been established on it, stable on it, and then we're continuing it.
Right. So for me, it was kind of like an emergency case. So it's like, oh, everything's not working, give him this thing. And it's really frustrating for me because a new class of drug had sort of just come out called biologics. Biologics are like this wonder drug.
They're phenomenal. They're like monoclonal antibodies. They basically target I don't actually know how they work properly, but
ask my dad.
They are phenomenal for getting their disease into remission.
Yeah.
But they weren't available. They weren't really available when we were younger.
Not at all. Because you got to remember, this is 2005.
Yeah.
So this is literally 20 years ago. Oh God, I feel old. And so yeah, biologics didn't exist basically. They would have just been like doing the human trials, I guess. So yeah, that just wasn't available. And so cyclosporin is what they put me on, and it's such a weirdly powerful drug that it's used, as far as I'm aware, for bone marrow transplant patients.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah, And that's the degree to which it suppresses your immune system. It was really kind of scary because they were giving me IV cyclosporin, and it's so sensitive, I guess, that it reacts with sunlight. So they had to put a piece of paper over it so that it didn't react as they was going my vein.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
And I'm just like, oh, that stuff's going like in me. Like this is really bad. And by this point, I was in a very bad way. I was probably about 6 stone. I must have been almost 6 foot by then. I was tall, and yeah, 6 stone. I looked like skeletal with eyeballs, and it just got progressively worse. And the cyclosporin worked to suppress my immune system, but didn't work for the disease.
Thing is, when we were that age, I never fully appreciated how bad your condition actually had got to.
Yeah. And this is we're getting to the bad bit now, because the cyclosporin suppressed my immune system to the degree that I remember my skin all broke out on my face, because I guess my immune system couldn't handle the bacteria just normally on my skin. And then it progressively got worse and worse. And I remember probably, we've talked about a bunch of this before because we tried to film before, but not this. So probably the worst week of my life was, I was in a lot of pain. I wasn't able to eat anything for about a month. I was on, I think, an IV in this arm, EKG monitor on my chest, and mask on my face, or at least the breathing tubes as well. So I couldn't move. I couldn't get up, and I was stuck like that for a week.
Were you being fed in any way? Did you have like a nasogastric tube?
I don't think I had the NG tube yet.
Or were they trying to rest your bowel while all of this was going on?
Honestly, I have no idea.
Fine.
But I was nil by mouth because I couldn't have anything. And so I had, this is where I have experience of, the sponges they give you to like wet your mouth? I had that.
Yeah, we call them lollies.
Yeah.
It's like a little plastic tube, and a drumstick with a little like pink sponge on it, and you just put it in water and then you just
wet the inside
the inside of someone's mouth just for comfort.
Yeah, because you've got a dry mouth because you can't ingest anything. So I was like that for about a week. It was when it was getting really, really bad. And I was in such pain that I can't really sleep. So I hadn't eaten anything for about a month. I hadn't really slept in about a month and a half. Despite the fact that I was on morphine all the time and every day. And it got bad enough that they had to do emergency surgery. My dad told me afterwards, they said, okay, I think they said to my dad, if we don't operate now, he will be dead in a week.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. Kind of glad I didn't hear that one. This is where I get emotional. I remember...
Take your time.
Yeah. I remember being wheeled into the pre-op room, and I don't know if I hallucinated this or not, but I remember being wheeled past both my parents, and I remember my mum with her head in her hands and crying, and my dad with his arm around her shoulders as I got wheeled past. I don't know if that was real or not, but I remember that. So, on a lighter note, I remember just before that because I don't really have that much clear memory from this point. I was on a lot of morphine. And so I remember when they marked me up for surgery. We talked about this earlier. I thought they were like special medical pens that they mark you up with, but it's just permanent marker.
Sharpie. The Sharpie. The worst case scenario is often that you can't, when you're on a surgical ward, sometimes you can't even find the Sharpie pens. So then you just use a whiteboard marker.
Oh my God.
And you have to be really careful that it doesn't get rubbed off.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Or you use pen, like a normal pen, and you just make really, really big lines.
You're just biroing on someone. Jesus.
Honestly, it's not
State
great.
the NHS.
But it's just that if someone has a Sharpie pen, okay, no. So usually, some of the surgeons will just have their own Sharpie pen that they won't give to anyone else,
Really splattering out.
or they're the ones that have taken it off the ward and claimed it as their own. I don't know, but yeah, it's not. There's nothing special about them.
We talked about this last time, but the trick, if you're a medical practitioner and you're watching this and your Sharpies are drying out, or your whiteboard pens, dip them in pure alcohol, because they're alcohol-based pens and they will work like amazingly again. So yeah, so that's a trick. But I don't remember too much of that, but I remember they were marking me up for the surgery. And it's literally just like a dotted line just there, and like a dot where the stoma was going to come out. And so, for those of you who don't know at home, the surgery that they did to me was called a colectomy, I believe. And it's basically where you just remove the entire large intestine and have the end of the small intestine poking through like this part of the stomach into what's called a colostomy bag, which is just a poo bag, basically. It's what every 15-year-old wants in their life. But yeah, so I remember.
Oh, by the way, it's not even solid formed poo.
No. Well, depends.
Not all. Well, it depends what you've eaten.
Yeah, it's.
But your large bowel is where the water gets absorbed or gets reabsorbed in your body. So if you don't have your large bowel, then all of that liquid is still in your poo, which makes leaks very likely.
Yeah. Oh God, we'll talk about this. But basically, when they marked me up, the only thing I remember was saying like, "Oh, put it lower, put it lower." And I like had this vague notion of like, oh, I want to be able to wear like a belt over it rather than under it. I don't think I really fully comprehended what was about to happen. And this is something I've been unpacking a lot in therapy recently. It never occurred to me that I, during this time, didn't really feel any emotions. I wasn't really scared. I just kind of dealt with the situation. And I realize now it's because my brain was kind of like shutting down my emotions so I could just deal with this, which obviously has ramifications further down the line. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I had the surgery, came out with a colostomy bag. It took a while to start working, but I was so ill going into that surgery that it took 6 months to like recover.
Wow.
I basically had to learn to walk again because I was so frail. I mean, literally like 15, 16-year-old who weighs like less than 6 stone at almost 6 foot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually unbelievable.
Yeah, I looked like Skeletor with eyeballs. It's funny in a way. I remember at the time, I don't know what they said, but I remember like I had a doctor come in once and they were sort of like feeling around like my stomach. And one person said, "Oh my God, he's so thin, I can feel X. Like I can feel something." And it was something like here in my hip. And I was just like, don't know what that is, but it doesn't sound great. This is actually, throughout all of this process, people at home won't know, but my dad worked for AstraZeneca and was a trained pharmacologist. So I don't know if it was better or worse that he completely understood exactly what was happening at every stage of the process. Also, it makes him a pain in the ass to watch Grey's Anatomy with. Like, I swear to God, every single time, like, it will start the episode, or House, it'll start the episode, and, like, the person will come in and go, "Oh, I've got these symptoms, no one knows what this is," and now they'll go, "Oh, yeah, he's probably got this, they'll prescribe these drugs." It's like, fantastic. Cool. And then he'll go to sleep. And he'll wake up at the end of the episode. And just
I was right.
Yeah, literally. Or no, he'll just be like, "Oh, so what happened?" It's like, "Shut up, Dad."
The thing is, I think it actually helps. It would have helped him because
Yeah.
you then latch on to the knowledge that you have. It might have not, I don't want to say it made it easier because it definitely wasn't easy. But when you can understand what's going on, it helps to kind of take the pressure off your emotions because then you're dealing with objective things that you know
Yeah.
rather than hypothetical situations and worst case scenarios,
Yeah.
I suspect. And also probably it makes it more. I find this when I speak to patients or their relatives, if they have medical background, it makes it easier to communicate with them because
They speak your language.
Exactly. Yeah. Whilst I can avoid jargon, it's easier to not avoid jargon and use it because I can give them more of an accurate picture.
Yeah, I think that's very true. It's gone to the point as well where I happened to have St. Mark's Hospital very close to me, and so that's where I ended up for all of my surgeries. It's actually kind of funny. The guy who invented the surgery that I had, I met him, and he went to my old school.
Really?
Yeah.
What did you have? Did you have a Hartman's procedure?
No, Hartman's is the thing where they put a thing in your heart, right?
No. Hartman's is it's like an emergency surgery where they remove like basically the whole of the I think the left-hand side of your colon. But you had everything removed.
Yeah, I had a full
colectomy.
colectomy.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Oh no, I think of a Hitman line.
Yeah, you're talking about Hickman line.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I think he just invented like how to do a full colectomy, I guess.
Okay. Wow.
So I was just like, yeah, cool, awesome. He wasn't in the same house as me or Lloyd. But yeah, so that process of recovery, so recovering from the full colectomy, was long. So I missed half of year 10. I went into year 11, very weakened. Getting home, actually, after that was a bit of a process because there was a period of time where I was still struggling to eat enough. So that was when I had a nasal gastric tube, which is a tube that goes in your nose and into your stomach to feed me like 20,000 calories a day or something. Something crazy because I couldn't eat fast enough to recover.
20,000 calories is a lot.
It was crazy. It was like a
Okay.
ridiculous amount. And so, yeah, I got into year 11 and had a colostomy bag, a thing, because my surgery was open. They hadn't invented keyhole surgery by this point, as far as I'm aware.
I mean, probably not for this. Also, if it's an emergency,
Yeah, just like straight in there.
you just need to.
Yeah, it was a lot because that wound was deep and wide. So it took like 6 months to heal by itself. So when I came out of hospital, I had colostomy bag, like thing over the scar where they'd done the surgery. And then what they had done is they'd left like my rectum there and attached like the back end of the rectum to the front of my like stomach. And so like I had like a thing over that there because there was like a little bit of an opening. And I honestly, I was like, what the fuck is this about? Like, the other stuff I get, but what the hell is that? And I was honestly like, you know what, I'm not going to question it, whatever. Like, I'm alive. It'll do.
So I don't know the actual answer for that, but I can theorize
Yeah.
and hypothesize, and it might be that if they just left that end floating around in your abdomen, it would attach to something and cause a problem. So if they can make it like one single tube going somewhere, it won't latch onto somewhere else if you've got it.
Oh, no, this makes sense. Because they kept my, like, anus and rectum, basically, because they didn't want to stitch me up. They didn't want to give me, like, a Barbie butt.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, fine.
I just thought of that.
So they have to make it a passage, a tract, so that, and also then it meant that as we get on your story, they can reverse it.
Exactly. Oh, that makes so much more sense. I've literally just thought of that.
Yes.
That solves that mystery. So, yeah, I was like that for quite a while. Then I ended up having to go back to hospital. I think in the winter, so February again, or maybe December. I don't know. Was I in? I don't know if I was in hospital for Christmas. No, it was sometime in beginning of year 11.
Okay.
I had to go back to hospital, I think. This is really annoying because the timeline's really fuzzy for me. But anyway, very soon into year 11, I had to go back into hospital. And I had some sort of like twist in my bowel, which they had to take out.
Oh, interesting.
It was a twist in my small bowel, actually.
Yeah.
It was about, they took out about,
So that took out a segment.
yeah, about that much small bowel. I think while they were there, no, that's not when they did the pouch creation, but they did something else while they were there. And again, I was in hospital for like a really long time. And I had to have this again process of recovery. And then in the summer of my year 11, I finished all my GCSEs. That was when I electively had to go in and get the pouch created. So, and again, you have to correct me where I'm wrong, but what they did was they went in and they fold over the end of your small intestine, cut this bit here, this bit goes to the back passage, and this sort of what's called a pouch, a J pouch, replicates the function of a large intestine. And it means instead of just needing to go to the loo all the time, there's something to hold the waste as it goes through.
Yeah. I remember I learned about this at med school, so this is a
Quick refresher.
probably like 13 years ago now. And I remember learning about it, and I was like, oh, this is what Alex had.
Yeah, it's like, that's me.
It's like the ilioanal pouch anastomosis or something.
Yeah.
So they create the pouch with the terminal ileum, which is the end of the small intestine, and then they reconnect it to whatever part of the anus and rectum that you have left.
Yeah, that went by really well. That surgery was really good. I had the same surgeon throughout a lot of this. Her name was Miss Vasey. She's incredible. She's so good.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. Again, people don't know this, but St. Mark's, it's an NHS hospital, but it's like
the best in the world.
Literally the best in the world. They invent the surgeries that everyone else does, which is amazing. And so, yeah, I've always had literally the best care in the world. And I don't think the NHS gets enough credit for stuff like that. So, yeah, that all happened. I spent the rest of my summer holidays recovering. I was just thinking back to like all of it and how it like ruined a whole bunch of school for me. Because by this point, I missed half of year 10 and half of year 11. So I missed half my GCSEs. And it was really frustrating because the only help the exam board gave me was 1 extra mark on my art exam. And I'm just like...
It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just like, I literally missed half this course, guys. Like, fuck off. So yeah, there was that.
Did your school want you to retake that year?
No, not yet.
Okay.
So I like to think I'm quite clever. I like to think I am. But
You are. You were always bright even when we were growing up. And you were very, very, very
nerdy.
avid reader. No, but you read a lot of books and stuff. Like that's how you develop empathy. That's how you develop knowledge.
Well, it depends if you really fancy books or not. But yeah, so basically I went into sixth form and I started doing something called the IB, the International Baccalaureate.
Which is horrendously difficult.
Oh my God. I actually had a great time with it, but only for certain subjects. Because I'm very good at English Lit and history. And so all the English Lit and history bits that I was doing, I smashed. And
You have to do 7 subjects.
Essentially, it's like 7.5.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, A-levels are so much easier.
Until I know it. So, yeah, they say if you miss like a week of IB, it's hard to catch up. I got ill in the second week of lower sixth, so year 12. And yeah, I missed the whole term.
Okay. So, game over basically for that.
Basically, yeah. And so I came back, did second and third term, and the school sent a letter home. And they said, okay, look, you've not done well on these final exams. We don't feel comfortable promoting you to year 13. So you have a couple of options. Number 1, you could resit your exams, and we know you don't want to do that. Or you could repeat the year, and we know you don't want to do that. Or you could leave. And I was just like, fuck you guys, I'm gone.
Interestingly, though, that was probably one of the best things that's happened to you.
Oh, 100%. 100%. boarding school is a very high pressure environment. And I didn't tell anyone anything. There were rumors that I had died. There were rumors that, and bear in mind, I was a very unpopular kid at school. There were rumors that I died. There were rumors that I had my insides taken out and put back in, which is not technically untrue. All kinds of stuff. And also, like, the whole time, I lived in school and I was having to hide the fact that I had a colostomy bag. It wasn't super fun.
It must have been so difficult for you, just emotionally.
Yeah.
Like, the physical element is one thing which is quite easy to empathise with, I think.
Yeah.
But the emotional toll that would have taken on you, particularly. So, were your family now back?
Yeah. So
they came back at this point. Yeah.
My family all came back from India at sort of like the middle of year 10.
Okay.
So yeah, everyone was back, which was good, which was really nice. But I will say, so my brother and my sister, Lloyd and Alicia, they, I think, were pretty well insulated from everything that happened. Alicia was young. She must have been about 6, 7.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was young when all this happened. And Lloyd was 2 years below me. And we were in the same house at school, but they only took him to visit me like once or twice. When things were bad, he didn't see me, which I think was probably good, because it was like not great. So yeah, they kind of missed all of that. I just had a flash of a funny memory. Do you remember Halloween, like 2006?
I don't remember the year, but is this the one where we got loads?
So much.
Yeah, because we went round with Alicia.
Yeah, I remember that. You guys went. I couldn't leave the couch.
Okay.
And I remember they came back with this huge pile of sweets. It was. I think I've still got.
No, we actually finessed the system really well. So in terms of ages, it goes Lloyd, then I was in the year above him, and then Alex was in the year above me, and we all went to like kindergarten together. Not kindergarten.
Yeah,
like,
like,
pre that. Like a pre-prep.
Yeah.
And when Alicia was then 6, Lloyd and I took her round all the houses for Halloween. And then we got loads of sweets. That was great. And then we went round again an hour later, just me and him, when all the other kids... So we were then the last people, and we got so much food and sweets and...
It's because, like, being the last, everyone's like, just take it all.
Also, remember, one of our neighbours gave us, like, expired mini rolls.
Oh, yeah. Trying to poison you. But I remember specifically, I was still healing from the surgery. Yeah. I think it was the first surgery. And so, like, I didn't have the abdominal strength to sit up. So I had to roll off the couch. I just got a flash of that memory. That was fun. But, yeah, so we sort of, like, moved into lower 6th now. So, again, I got really badly ill doing my IB and ended up having to leave boarding school and went to a state school in Watford instead. Mum, God, it's been long enough now. So I went to a Catholic school in Watford, and I think one of the first questions they asked my mum was like, "Is he Catholic?" And she was like, "Sure." My Hindu mum was just like, "Whatever, sure, why not?" So I ended up in a Catholic school again, because I went to a Catholic school for primary school as well, and I could not have lucked out any more than I did. I was very lucky because I ended up with a group of guys who became my friend group, who all happened to have all the same interests as me.
Yeah, I remember you coming home and telling me about Naruto.
Yeah.
And how incredible this cartoon was.
I'm surprised you remember that. But yeah, like we were all into anime, Warhammer, comics, nerdy stuff, PlayStation, all massive gamers. So yeah, I really lucked out with a friend group there. And my sort of journey in being able to tell people about the condition is sort of in phases. In boarding school, didn't tell anyone at all. No one knew anything. I'm not sure even the teachers fully understood what was going on.
To be fair, we never really spoke about it, even when we were neighbours.
Yeah, exactly.
My memory from a lot of that time is when we were going to get in trouble by your dad, me and Lloyd would get told off, and you'd be like, "Oh, I got to go change my bag." I just disappeared to the toilet for like an hour.
I mean, yeah. Bag change like a pit stop.
We'd get told off, and then you just like come down like.
Oh, having a bag's good for something. But I think that's actually a really interesting point. For a lot of people, having a bag can mean freedom, because you're a slave to your terrible guts, basically. If you're in a really bad place and your condition and your colitis or Crohn's isn't very well controlled, it can feel horrible. You're in constant pain, you're going to the loo, and this is not an exaggeration, 20 times a day. I remember before...
Wait, more than 7 times is a severe flare, by the way.
Oh, 20 is like, I've done 20 before.
But I've had patients who are doing 15, and I'm just like, you need to go to the hospital.
Oh, 100%.
Like, there's nothing I can do in general practice for you.
Yeah, like, go straight to A&E. Like, I remember once, I was in the loo so much that I was like this. And so I was getting calluses on my knees from where my elbow was resting on them, because I was in the loo for so long periods of time.
Oh, it's funny, but we have to laugh or we cry.
Yeah, right? It was bad. And like, it's horribly painful. And like, the thing that I think I really remember is the smell. Because it doesn't smell bad, because it's just blood. Like by that point, I'm not even sure how much like waste is in there. It's that very strong, tangy, coppery smell of blood, which you must be used to from surgeries and stuff. But yeah, it's like a smell can trigger like a, not backlash.
It's like a memory.
Yeah, like a
flashback.
Memory. Flashback, that's it. Of all of it. And
Also, you used to describe it as... So some people, it can be common for people to get a bit of blood in their poo. The most common causes are things like piles, fissures. But if you do get blood in your poo or feel a lump down below, go to a doctor, because 100%. We need to make sure we're not missing something like, in really severe cases, colitis. Inflammatory bowel disease, or rectal cancers. But if it is going to be something like colitis, it's not just a little bit of blood. I remember you describing it as Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the toilet.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It's like you look and you're just like, wow, something got murdered.
Yeah.
This is actually the reason why...
And that was in the days before smartphones, by the way, so you couldn't even take photos of it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is actually something to mention as well. Like, when all of this was happening, I was a teenager, especially at boarding school. And honestly, the internet barely existed. This is like 2000... When this first started happening, it was 2003, 2004. Like, the Iraq War had just happened. Like, Facebook did not exist. Social media was, as a concept, did not exist. Like, Google had only been a thing for like a couple of years. YouTube didn't exist yet. There were absolutely no resources available. So, and being in a boarding school in a village in England in the middle of nowhere, it feels like you're alone, because kind of I was. There was no contact with anyone, and it was lonely and scary and isolating. And there's no one to turn to. And
there's no one that we even would have known who had been through anything even remotely similar.
No. I found out later, actually, one of my uncles, Biru, actually had ulcerative colitis, and my mum's side of the family, there's a few people who have it, but they never talked about it.
Yeah.
Like, not once. Like, Biru must be like 20 years older than me, like 20, 30 years older.
It's like a lot of health things, there's just unnecessary stigma, shame, and taboo associated with them.
Yeah.
Particularly if it's bowels or genital related.
Yeah, 100%. Especially in Indian communities as well. Like, no one talks about this stuff.
It's like a source of shame within a family, within a community. I completely disagree with the way that those things are viewed.
Exactly. And this is me not having anyone to really talk to about this who understood on the same level as me, meant that over time, and this was the stages of me being able to open up about things. At first at boarding school, I couldn't tell anyone about it because they would jump on weakness. And I didn't really fancy getting bullied. Then when I was at state school, repeated lower sixth and did upper sixth, I told my friends individually, one at a time. And by the end of school, I was in a more comfortable place where I was able to talk about it a lot more openly. And then as soon as I hit uni, I was like, yep, I'm telling everyone. I was overcoming that stigma in my own head. And I realized it's actually an important thing to just kind of explain to anyone. Like whenever I date, if I'm not, I always explain on the first date.
You kind of have to.
Exactly, because people don't realize the degree to which chronic illnesses affect how you interact with the whole world around you. So, like, for example, if I'm on a first date and I disappear for half an hour, they have to know that I haven't just left. Like, I'm in the loo. Like, it's going to be okay. Like, I'm coming back. But yeah, there have been a lot of times where chronic illness has just kind of ruined bits of my life. Dating's been a big one, actually.
So tell me more about that, because
Yeah.
that's a lot of the... So as a medic, when I was at uni, learning about ulcerative colitis, we didn't really learn about the chronic illness aspect of it, the functional aspect, the way that it affects your day-to-day life. We learned about the medicine behind it, the cause of the disease, the pathophysiology of the disease, the pharmacokinetics of all of the drugs. So I'm well versed in all of that.
Yeah.
But when I say that it's only recently that we've even been able to start talking about the way that it's impacted all other aspects of your life, you're the one that has really helped me empathize with people, patients, the public, people that comment on my videos. And I thank you for that. But I think that it would be really useful if we can hear it from you and understand that. So first of all, considering that you've been operated on, you've had it reversed, one would think that would just be the end of it now.
Yeah. I think one thing I forget a lot of the time is that I now technically have a disability. Like, I am missing an organ. That is just a thing. So that has repercussions. Like, your large intestine absorbs water and electrolytes. And so I am constantly having to think about, okay, how hydrated am I? What have I eaten today? And where am I going to be? What's the loo situation there going to be like? Because your large intestine is shorter, but moves a lot slower than your small intestine does, even though your small intestine is longer. And so what takes most people 24 hours to digest takes me about 3. And so I'm constantly judging, okay, is what I'm eating or drinking going to speed up my rate of gut transition or slow me down? And so it's always a case of like taking all of these things into account. Okay, this food will speed me up, that one will slow me down, this one will slow me down too much, which means I'll have to eat something or drink something that will speed me up a little bit. It's like this addition, subtraction kind of game. And then on top of that, okay, am I going to be in a place in an hour or however long where I can have some privacy, go to a loo, and like be comfortable? And so trying to fit that around like modern life can be really hard. It could suck. And this is kind of why I like haven't traveled as much as I would have wanted to. Like, there are places I just kind of can't go. There are things I kind of just can't do. Or at least I have a mental block as to if I could or not.
It's interesting though, because you went to Taiwan for a while and you absolutely loved it.
Oh my God, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, one of the best things I've ever done. So once I hit uni, things were a little bit different. I was more accepting of my condition, but also it's the longest period, that, especially my first year, was the longest period of consecutive time that I had been well. It was like 2.5 years, and I was good. So first year of uni, I had the best time because I spent, by this point, maybe if you combine it all, about 1.5 years in hospital.
Actually, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. By this point, I had almost died twice, had to learn to walk again, and spent like about a year and a half in hospital. So once I hit uni, I was just like, okay, I'm going to do everything. So I was in the gym 3 times a week. I was fencing like 3 times a week. I was rock climbing once a week. I was going to all my lectures. I started other clubs. Like we were out like in the club like 4 nights a week, which was amazing. And also like I could do that because I don't drink. Some of that is to do with colitis. Some of that is to do with the fact that I never grew up with it. So like my parents don't drink. And I've tried a bit of alcohol before. I don't like the feeling of being a bit tipsy. I don't like the taste of alcohol. So it's never really been my thing. So yeah, and also like being dehydrated is a bad place for me to be in. Yeah. Because your large intestine absorbs water and salt, so to rehydrate can take a lot more time. And so, yeah, that's why I'm sipping this. But yeah, first year of uni, had the best time. Got to do everything. And I felt kind of on top of the world. I was on no medication as well. And I kind of thought like, okay, this is kind of, this. Yeah, this is kind of going great. And then I went to Taiwan on my study abroad. I'd always wanted to go and study abroad. And I actually wanted to go to Hong Kong first, but I filled in all the forms too late. And so they were like, well, you're going to your third choice then. So I ended up in Taipei. Absolutely no regrets, had a fantastic time. But I got really ill at the end of my time in Taiwan. Ended up missing all my final exams and having to repeat second year of uni. Yeah. Which, again, no regrets. I think uni should be 4 years anyway. But I got something called pouchitis. It was something I got in school before, but is something that kind of kept on rearing its head. And so it's basically where you're, as far as I'm aware, there's an imbalance in your gut bacteria.
It makes sense. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I ended up going on a 2-week course of antibiotics to like clear it all up. But again, when I came back from Taiwan, I was in hospital in Taiwan for about 2 weeks. Came back and I was in hospital in the UK for another 2 weeks. So that was not super fun. And then I ended up having a lot more problems with these like chronic issues to do with this pouchitis. And that's just kind of continued.
Do you think, okay, so do you think that some of that could also be to do, because we're learning more and more about like the gut-brain axis.
Yeah.
It would then make sense that if this was to do with gut microbiome and the fact that you are severely lacking of a huge part of your gut and your bowels, that that would then affect the functional aspects of your life.
Could be. It could be. So by necessity of not having a large intestine, your diet changes. So I couldn't eat much fiber at all. So, oh God, you miss the stupidest stuff. I miss popcorn.
Yeah, but what would happen if you ate fiber?
So it depends what kind of fiber. So I think it's, what's the kind of fiber that tomatoes have? Is it insoluble or insoluble?
So you have soluble and insoluble. The skins are usually more insoluble, and then the inside is usually more soluble, but I don't know specifically about a tomato.
Yeah, so I think...
So soluble fiber makes things softer. Insoluble fiber is like it just scrapes stuff along.
So I've had to learn in terms of my diet, like how does this affect me? What does it do? For example, I can't really have brown stuff anymore. So like brown toast or brown bread, brown rice, that kind of stuff. And I figured out that I can have 4 slices of brown bread a day, but they have to be in 2s and at least 4 hours apart, and I can't do that on 2 consecutive days.
Interesting.
It's to that kind of granularity. So yeah, popcorn doesn't digest, and it's sharp. So if you have a lot of it, it's like eating razor blades.
Interesting. Okay.
Because it comes out exactly as it went in.
Fine.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. had a buddy of mine who had a bit of a flare-up actually because I think he saw the Avengers and ate like a big bucket of popcorn, and it ruined him for like a week.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it wasn't not great. But this is the thing. This condition affects you in so many ways that you don't expect. Your diet has to change, your lifestyle has to change, honestly, your life aspirations have to change as well. When I was 13, I had a set plan of what I wanted to do. I definitely didn't tell my mum this. I think my dad kind of maybe knew. I always wanted to join the military. I always thought my path in life was I would do my degree, go to Sandhurst, become an officer, do maybe 2 tours of duty, and then leave, and then do something else. I looked on the Army website for things that you could and couldn't have, and ulcerative colitis is the first thing on the list.
By the way,
Yeah.
okay, there we go. We'll talk about nerdy stuff. So I set up a marching band at my school because I was a
What?
drummer. I was a drummer, right? So I made
Well, a doubler.
no. I was an actual drummer and doubler, and I played lots of percussion. I played lots of other instruments as well, but one of them that I did was drums, and I'd watched a movie called Drumline, which is all about marching bands, which is awesome. So I was like, yeah, this is awesome. I want to set up a marching band at my school.
Yeah.
So I did that. I was on the snare. And off the back of that, I was also part of the Army cadets in CCF. I arranged for there to be a trip away where we would stay on an actual Army base with their marching band and train with them for a few days. Mm-hmm. I wasn't allowed to go on the trip because I have mild asthma. There would be no running involved. It's just walk around and play a drum. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't allowed to go because of that. So yeah, absolutely, you could not go in the Army with UC.
No, not a chance. Like, there's no way in hell. Weirdly, it was the first thing on the list, and like alphabetically, that doesn't make any sense. But like, I get it. Normally, I think the Army prefer you to have all of your organs when you start, if not when you finish. So yeah, I understood that, but yeah, that was always my plan, and so I had to kind of change the direction of my life, basically. So yeah, that happened, and yeah, colitis and just chronic illness affects so many more things than you think it will. I miss bran.
What is, as in bran flakes?
Yeah. Like Weetabix.
Yeah.
Oh God, I miss Weetabix.
Weetabix with sugar is delicious.
Right? My dad used to have Weetabix every morning for breakfast. And yeah, I can't handle it. Like a bowl of porridge for me, like a big bowl of porridge, that's flirting with an intestinal blockage.
Really?
It can. Yeah, I mean, I've heard about people who get intestinal blockages from like a fry-up, which is bizarre.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm always like quite careful.
What's that?
Bless you. Yeah, so I'm always like quite cognizant of this because I've had an intestinal blockage, and it was one of the single most painful experiences of my life. And that was when I had to have that small piece of small intestine removed. It ruined me, and also it happened while I was on a school trip. Like,
but when we talk about intestinal blockages and we talk about twisting of the bowels,
yeah,
there are lots of different reasons why you'd have to have a bit of bowel cut out. Usually it's that twisted, or there's been an adhesion which has restricted the flow of blood to it, and then that segment of the bowel can die.
Yeah.
And it can be and it is life-threatening.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about the fibre causing a blockage, would it just make you supremely constipated?
As far as I'm aware,
does it do something completely different?
As far as I'm aware, intestinal blockage, I think in my mind, I thought like food. What I think they meant was some sort of like stricture in the bowel.
So they specifically told you not to eat.
Yeah, I was told like not just because of like a possible blockage, but also I was told, okay, you will not be able to eat certain foods. There are some foods that are better for you than others. I think it was more about gut transition than anything else. Really unhelpfully, you ask them like, okay, what can I eat and what can't I? And they're like, eat everything. I'm just like, that's not helpful, dude. Like, the one actually piece of advice they did give me, which was hilarious, was they said, okay, you need to eat more jelly babies. And I was just like, I mean,
I've given that advice in hospitals when I was on surgery because it gets digested and absorbed higher up in your GI tract.
Oh, I didn't know that. The reason they told me is because the gelatin in the jelly babies helps bind all of the waste in your stomach together.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, that's good.
Which makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah.
Amusingly, Haribo doesn't quite do that, but I didn't tell my parents that. So they bought me a shitload of Tang Plastics, and I was not going to correct them.
I used to love going around because you just have like these crates of Powerades outside.
Yeah.
And then your brother and I would be drinking too many of them. Then I remember coming around one day and Lloyd was like, yeah, we've been told not to drink these anymore. They're just for Alex. Yeah. That was sad.
Oh, honestly, the mango ones are the best ones. I kind of don't like the blue ones. But yeah, it's because like I struggle to rehydrate.
Yeah.
Amusingly, we found out later that Powerade does not help with that.
I'm surprised by that though.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's literally just blue sugar water. Well, nothing's going to help you.
Diurolite. Actually, now...
Don't get me fucking started about Diurolite.
There are studies though for mild dehydration.
It's actually really good.
Orange juice and water,
Yeah.
50-50, or apple juice and water, 50-50, is equivalent
Yeah.
to Diurolite. And so much more palatable. So that's what I recommend to kids.
Really? No.
I've never had Diurolite, so...
Fuck you.
Not that I remember.
Oh, you know what was actually even worse?
I presume it's disgusting.
Oh, it's not good. I think maybe like the lemon one isn't too bad.
Okay.
The orange one's okay. The blackcurrant one, oh my god.
That's one that sounds like it'd be quite nice.
No.
No.
It's awful. It's so bad.
Diurolite, please don't sue us.
Give them a side eye. But what was actually even worse was because St. Mark's is a specialist sort of institution for this stuff, they have their own one that they've created, and it's called eMix.
Interesting.
It's so much worse.
Oh.
Oh my god.
I thought you were going to say it was incredible.
No, it's awful. It's so much worse. They give it to me and I was just like, I hate all of you. Why? I'm already ill. I don't need more things to make me feel bad. So yeah, it's awful. Worked.
Yeah.
Like, it was great to rehydrate. Didn't want to drink it. So yeah, just another thing in hospital where you're just like, I hate this. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the actual chronic illness aspects now. So, effect on dating. You said you have to tell always have to tell on a first date.
Yeah.
That if you go to the toilet for a long period of time or whatever, this is what will happen.
Well, yeah. I mean, if we're going to talk about dating specifically, having this illness has ruined so many relationships for me. I mean, I don't talk to a bunch of these people anymore, so like I can talk about it. So the best examples I can think of are like, and this is a very typical chronic illness thing, you are not well. Like, most people's experience of having an illness or something is the flu or a broken bone. And that's actually like quite a linear process. It's, I'm fine, something is wrong with me, I'm fine again. That is not how chronic illness works at all. You are always ill, it's just the degree to which you are ill. So it's like, today I am 4% ill. And it's not even today. Sometimes it's, right now I am 4% ill. An hour later, I am 90% ill. And it fluctuates. Daily, hourly, weekly. It's completely random.
So there's no way of you predicting that this is how I feel now?
Nah.
Okay.
I've had it before where, I really hope my mum doesn't watch this. I've had it before where I had a girl coming round. She was in the Uber on the way to my place. And I had to message her and be like, and I told her to come round. And about 20 minutes later, I had to message her and be like, hey, I can't handle this right now. She was...
Which would be pretty jarring for...
If you're on the receiving end of it, yeah. Like, and she knew everything. But that's still a hard thing to deal with. Didn't help she was a bit drunk, but it's difficult. And that's just like a daily thing. I was actually, I'm doing a lot of therapy at the moment, and it's super helpful. And one thing I actually talked to my therapist about today was the fact that I've actually only ever been single when I've been going through like really bad bouts of illness. There's only been one time where I've been in a relationship and kind of been going through something, because I look at it like a graph, like it goes up and down. And I've only ever been with someone once when I've been on a downswing, and we broke up. We'd been going out for about a year, and it's a difficult thing to put on a partner. Like, I can't really do anything. Like, we can't go places because I can't go places. We can't do things because I can't do things. And so it's a hard thing to put on someone.
And it must be tough because you externally
You don't
you look really well.
Yeah, you look fine. Maybe skinnier, but it's called an invisible illness for a reason. And so it's difficult for people to conceptualize like, oh, you're ill. And that's tough. And it doesn't matter how well you're able to communicate. People don't have the framework of understanding to accept the information you're giving to them. I had a conversation actually with Lloyd, my brother, a while ago, and I said to him, like, he was like, oh, so what are the triggers for like what could happen to you that might like trigger you going into like having an attack or whatever? And I had to say to him, like, it is random. Like, there's nothing I can do. Like, things can just happen to me, and I just have to deal with it. And that's difficult for someone to wrap their head around who's never experienced it before. And it's meant that I haven't traveled as much as I would want to. I've got friends in other countries that I haven't seen in years because I struggle making plans into the future. Like, I'm supposed to be going to Taiwan later this year, and I'm just praying that I'm well enough to go. It's a struggle for me to make plans of any kind because I don't know what could happen. This is why I'm really glad I've got such good friends, like especially like you, especially my school friends, because they've known me since I was like 16 now. So they know if I disappear for half an hour, I'm in the loo. They know if I have to cancel something last minute, it's not because I'm an asshole. It's because I physically can't make it. Like last year, 2022, I had to cancel my own birthday because I physically couldn't make it to the restaurant. You miss out on so much. God, so much.
And that's a side of it that people don't see.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that comment in my videos when I talk about chronic illness, actually when I'm reflecting upon things that you've told me.
Yeah.
And people detail their experiences where they've just become isolated from everyone.
Yeah.
So it's really good that you've got this community.
Yeah.
But even when it's only literally in the last year and a half where you've even started telling me when you're going through a shit time because you don't want to bother me.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm the one person that, like, from a medical point of view, that might actually be able to understand kind of things that are going on. But you're so well versed in your illness now that you actually know more about it than I do because you are the expert in your body.
I'll tell you what, this is actually kind of a bad thing because people don't realize this with chronic illness, but you get to a point with illness that I have two teams. I've got my medical team and my surgical team. My medical team determine what drugs I take. My surgical team determine what surgeries I need. And I have joint clinics with both of them. And I had one last week. And one thing, we've talked about this before, one thing that happens when you've had a chronic condition for a long time is that they don't tell you what you need. They ask you what you want.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bitch, this is not how this works. You're the doctor. You tell me. And it's funny because like your treatment, you kind of negotiate with them. So like, for example, one thing that can happen with this condition is something called a fistula. It's like, I think you know what a fistula is, but the way I explain it to people is that this is super not fun to explain, but a fistula is basically when you have like a deep infection in like one arse cheek, essentially, and it forms like a tract. And so if that can like come to the surface, and then like stuff will come out of it, and then it can seal up, and then it can like
become an abscess.
Yeah,
and it becomes really, they're horrible.
Yeah, you're telling me. So I ended up with that, and so my treatment for these fistulas is a negotiation, and it's weird because like my surgeon, he was just like, okay, so how do you feel? What do you want? What are you thinking? And I've essentially said to him like, okay, yeah, I think we need to change this seton. And it's weird telling them what I need. It's such a bizarre like change.
But this is the thing though, because you've been through almost everything imaginable with your colitis. So you know when things are going a particular way. I see this a lot in general practice with people with chronic illness. If there's something going on or they feel slightly off,
oh yeah,
if they've lived with this condition for a decade, I'm not gonna try and reason them out of that position because I will probably be wrong if I try and do that. It's different if it's the first presentation of something, and then you're playing the balance of probabilities, and you're saying, well, actually, it might be this. Very unlikely. We can investigate for that, but it's probably this thing which is causing it. But when you've dealt with it your whole life, you tell me that, I'm just going to say, look, we need to get you to the specialist.
Yeah.
And when you get to the specialist level, that's the bit I don't really understand because, I guess it makes sense. But a lot of people that I see practice, that comment on my videos with chronic illnesses, talk about the functional effects that it's had on them. So the fatigue, the guilt. And I do often ask them, what are you hoping that I do for you? Because it sounds really bad. There's not a magic tablet that I can say, this is going to make you feel amazing.
Yeah, I wish there was.
But in those situations, what would you hope from, like, I don't know, have you ever been to your GP with the fatigue and the...
Genuinely, I was thinking about this the other day. I can't remember the last time I saw my GP.
Okay.
Like, the only thing I go to my GP for now is give me another prescription of whatever. Because we were talking about biologics before. I had chronic pouchitis, which, like we said before, is an inflammation of the pouch. I think it was caused by an imbalance in gut bacteria because I had this fistula, which got really bad, went on a long course of antibiotics for, and became...
I remember that was months and months and months. And they kept telling you to reverse your procedure and have a stoma again.
Yeah, and I was like,
really didn't want that. Yeah.
Because no one wants to be a 25-year-old with a stoma bag.
Would you be more receptive to it now?
It's difficult with me. I've seen a lot of people on the internet who are like, having a stoma bag changed my life for the better. Some people rave about it. They love it because they were essentially horribly disabled before. And it's like a new lease on life. Because having an organ that is going through that inside you affects you so badly, to the degree to which my dad said, he spoke to the surgeon when I first had my intestine removed, apparently my heart rate was 100 beats a minute for like 2 months constantly, because my body was under so much physiological pressure from this like organ, from my large intestine. So when they took it out, my heart rate immediately dropped from 100 to 80 beats a minute because I didn't have that physiological pressure.
Okay.
Like, it's so weird. Like, my uncle who had colitis, his body was under so much pressure from the colitis that he ended up with stress fractures at the bottom of his spine.
Oh my gosh.
You don't know these things can happen. So, yeah, it's a lot. I've completely forgotten the question.
No, that's fine. So in terms of, I just want to caveat that this is all through word of mouth, that what happened to your uncle. We don't know that was I can't say that was definitely the cause.
Yeah.
That's why I'm going to caveat that by saying
Yeah.
because I
I
don't
mean,
want to.
to
I
be
don't want to
fair-
get.
Yeah,
pulled
to
up
be
for-
fair, that could have just been because he was on a shitload of prednisolone.
Yeah, probably.
And
That was probably the more likely thing.
yeah, exactly.
So, in terms of the chronic illness and like the guilt, how does that manifest? How do you deal with it, and how is it affecting you even now?
You're right. Again, this is something we've talked about before. One thing people don't realize with chronic illness as a whole is the guilt that comes with it and the shame. And I know there's going to be a lot of people watching this who are just like, what are you talking about? This isn't shameful. You've got like a medical condition. But all people with chronic illnesses want is to be normal. You just want to be like everyone else. And you know you're not. I've got a lot of friends who are at Glastonbury right now, and I can't contemplate going to that kind of thing. Again, it's going back to like the stuff you miss out on because you can't do it. And you feel like a failure as a person going through this. It doesn't make any sense. But you just want to be normal, and you're not, and you know it, and you're constantly reminded by your body failing you over and over and over. And it gets to you. Because everyone when they grow up, you have expectations of yourself and what you can achieve, and everyone, including your parents and your friends and whatever, have expectations of you as well. Everyone knows intrinsically that they have potential. And having a chronic illness makes you feel like you're having your potential taken away from you. Because you have. And it sucks. And you don't have a choice. It's funny, I've talked to a whole bunch of chronic illness people about this, and people will regularly say to you, like, you're so strong, I couldn't deal with this. And it's just like, I don't have a choice.
Yeah, you literally have to. It's either that or
Die.
yeah.
Like, it's either this or I fall down and die. They're not great options, either way. And it's hard. This is one of the reasons I really enjoy social media. And I think a lot of people out there are just like, oh, why? Like, social media is terrible. Social media is actually fantastic at connecting communities of people together. If Instagram had existed when I was at school,
Life would have been so different.
oh my God, it would have helped. Because I would have been able to talk to people with my condition. And like,
I'd just say even like little hacks for how to manage it on a daily basis,
yeah.
And also the technology has improved now with stoma bags, where
Yeah.
the way the connectors and the thing that protects because you don't have your large bowel. Also the output from the stoma is quite acidic when you've
Yeah.
got like an.
Oh, that hurts. It's like an acid
Yeah.
burn all the time.
But now like the ring protectors and the things that you put over the stoma that give you a tighter seal and also protect your skin. But you didn't have that back then.
No, I didn't
But-
know that was a thing.
But even just like ways to handle it and ways to know that you might have a leak or things like that.
Yeah.
There was no one around to give you their lived experience.
Exactly. There was none of that. I look at content creators at the moment. There's someone called Hannah Witten who has a colostomy bag. I think she did have colitis. And she's a big sexual health influencer. And being a kid and going through your puberty and teenage years with a colostomy bag and then giant scars all over you does not lead you to being confident with dating in general or like girls or whatever. And so that's kind of a little bit where like some of the shame comes in, because you just want to be like normal and you are visually obviously not. Kind of going back to the dating thing, and I know I keep going back to it, but it is actually really important. Like, I've always had this fear of like having the bag again, because imagine going on a first date with someone, you have to explain what a colostomy bag is. It's bad enough having to explain like I'm missing my large intestine. And I have a script for that, which is like fun and engaging and like funny. But to explain to someone, yes, I have a poo bag attached to my stomach, that's hard. That's tough.
I know. Are you? Do you find that you use the humour as a coping and as a defence mechanism?
Yeah, not just a defense mechanism. It's easier for someone to engage with, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so open about this stuff. I know I've had this condition long enough that I can express what it's like to have this stuff very easily and very eloquently. If you are new to having colitis, it's new and scary and weird. And so by me being open, I'm helping the person I'm talking to understand what the condition is like. But also, if that person then encounters someone else who's got colitis and they say, oh, I've got ulcerative colitis, that person will go, oh, yeah, I know what that is. And they'll feel less weird. And so it's almost like a public duty, I feel. Like I have to explain this stuff. I have to be open with it. Because, yeah, I kind of have this responsibility. This kind of goes back to the Quipster thing as well. So this goes back to the Quipster thing as well. Basically, and lockdown as well, actually. So there were long periods of time where I couldn't do anything. You're stuck at home, you're in pain, or you're feeling very, very fatigued, and you're just not having a good time. I remember I had a period of time, it must have been from 2017 to sort of the beginning of 2018, where I was so fatigued, I was like running on 80% of the energy I should have, but trying to do 100% of like life, work and do things and see people and date and whatever. It kind of goes back to the shame a little bit. You just want to live a normal life. People with chronic illnesses don't care about anything else. All they want to do is live a normal life and do things which everyone takes for granted. Bit of an anecdote, but some of the best feelings I've ever had in my life are walking out of a hospital after having been carried into it. It's funny as well. I think people who design hospitals need to know stuff like this, but every hospital I've ever been to, everything is painted some
disgustingly grey or blue or white.
It's some awful like shade of grey.
Yeah.
And you get in there and you're like, this is terrible. It's depressing and horrible. And I compare that to being on a children's ward, like a pediatric ward. Pediatric wards are fantastic.
Particularly at Northwick, where it's like Peter Pan and Wendy.
Yeah, right. It's actually like, those wards are really nice. And because when I first got brought in, I was in the pediatric ward. And then eventually I grew older and got taken to the adult ward. And the adult ward sucked. Because everything is grey. And I genuinely think, like, when I left hospital, it was as if colours were brighter and more saturated. And I looked around and I was just like, oh my God, I feel like my eyesight's better. Because I've just spent all of this time in a grey box. And so, yeah, it's not fun. But even when I was at home, like, you know, being 26, 27, yeah, there were long periods of time where all I could do was play PlayStation. And it was not fun. And I became isolated from friends. And this is one of the reasons why I try and be as social as I can. Because I'm as social as I can be when I'm able to be. And so, yeah, when sort of the end of 2018 happened, I was not in a good place health-wise. And I was like, okay, I want to do something where I can just sit there and be ill and do a thing. So that was how I discovered Warhammer again, because you paint the figures. And it was a really interesting thing because as time went on, I got more and more into the community. I built up an Instagram following, and now I have almost 20,000 followers on Instagram. And through that, I've been able to reach a lot of people who have chronic illnesses. And especially people who've had like ulcerative colitis, actually, and they're just getting into it. And it's been really nice for me to have this platform to connect with people like that. And so I do view it as a bit of a responsibility. Like, when it comes to having a chronic illness, I'm a bit of an elder statesman at this point, and for 20 years. And so like I've had people come up to me and say, hey, I've just been diagnosed with a chronic illness. I really don't know what to do with this. Like, have you got any advice? And I do. And it's nice to be able to help people like that. It's funny as well, when lockdown first happened, everyone was complaining, like, oh, this is so hard. Oh, I've never spent so much time alone. Oh, I'm stuck in my house. I'm just like, bitch, get on my level. Like, I've been in the house for 2 years at a time. Like, this is nothing. I had a great time in lockdown because I had already cultivated hobbies and interests that I could do from home. I was very used to spending long periods of time by myself indoors because I've had to do it for years. So for people with chronic illnesses, lockdown was actually not that hard. And so yeah, it's interesting to be able to kind of have that shared experience with everyone. It's like, yeah, it sucks. But yeah, it's been an interesting ride. Sort of like going back a little bit to sort of medical uncertainty and negotiating and stuff with your doctors. I've seen a lot of stuff online actually, and it talks about people who have like chronic fatigue syndrome or something like that, and they struggle with doctors and diagnosing. I remember there was that thing you did a reaction to a while ago, and I've actually never found that. I've never experienced a situation where a doctor didn't believe me or I struggled with some aspect of like my medical care. And I think it was really interesting what you said to me. You said to me, yeah, if you're in the system and you have a diagnosis, kind of, you're not fine, but it's much easier to treat that. And I think...
Yeah. Also, it's easier for doctors to understand and appreciate, I think, when you've had a physical illness, which we know is as devastating as ulcerative colitis, which then leads you to developing a chronic illness in terms of all of the functional aspects of it. But I think long COVID, chronic fatigue syndrome, we're learning more and more about those. We just don't have a huge amount of tools in our arsenal to be able to help people tackle them. And a lot of the management then focuses on how to live with it. Which is shit, to be honest. Like that's not us helping. That's just us saying you kind of got to just deal with it, and that is heartbreaking to do that. And I get so many. Again, my understanding of a lot of these issues hasn't come from real life interactions with people. A lot of it's come from social media as well, where I read all of the comments on my videos. I understand, or I try to understand and empathize with people because they detail their experiences in my comments. And the good, the bad experiences, and it sounds terrible. It sounds like horrific to deal with. I think you probably get a lot more sympathy from doctors because you've had your bowel cut out. Yeah,
it's kind of like it's like just more of a known thing. I had a surgery, I had an illness. Here are the tools I use to deal with that. But yeah, I think it goes back to like having a protocol. If a condition is so new that there's no proper protocol for it, like, what do you do? Like, I don't know. So yeah, that really sucks. And I do have a bunch of friends who are in that position, Like they have long COVID, they have like fatigue syndromes, etc. POTS is like another one. What does that even stand for?
Postural, some people say orthostatic, but postural tachycardia syndrome,
Okay.
which is when people stand up,
Yeah.
their blood flow to their brain essentially doesn't, their blood vessels don't really constrict enough to maintain blood pressure.
So they just go.
That's one way of describing it. Or when they stand up, their heart rate shoots up really, really, really high. And then that's where the tachycardia syndrome comes in. But
Right.
it can be that that's not even enough. Their heart rate going up that high isn't enough to maintain blood flow. So then they might collapse. So that is also not fully understood. And there's so many theories about what's caused it. We don't fully understand it. There's so many things about treatment, but there's not a huge amount that's in guidelines, particularly in the UK, because we don't know enough about it yet.
Yeah.
It sounds awful to have to deal with. Imagine every time you stand up.
You just fall.
Well, like but your heart rate just shoots up so fast. So they do this thing called a tilt table test, which is where they put you on a table and they slowly. So this is your head, these are your feet. Slowly tilt you. They're tracking everything, so heart rate, probably blood pressure at the same time. And some people would just faint on the table when they get to vertical.
Jeez.
And it's about assessing what happens to the heart rate as they go up.
Right. Okay.
But in a controlled manner.
Yeah.
So it's not just...
See, this is really interesting for me because, like, lately I had a... They don't call it a colonoscopy anymore because I don't have a colon. They call it a pouchoscopy because I've got a pouch. And so I had a pouchoscopy recently, and I have had anxiety about what they said to me for months.
Really?
Yeah. And it was literally... My surgeon did it because I think it was during a junior doctor strike. So my consultant was the one who did it, and she shoved a camera up my butt, which was fun. It wasn't. And she looked around and she said, okay, this looks great. Incidentally, if you've got a pouch and not a colon, the prep for having a scope is so much more simple and so much more easy. It's literally just like an enema, and then you're just like good to go. And you do it like half an hour beforehand, which is fantastic. But yeah, so she did the scope, and I did a lot of gas when I was there. And she was like, yeah, okay, looks really healed, because I've just started biologics. I've been on them for about a year now. Infliximab, fantastic drug, works super well. Touch wood. And so yeah, she did this pouch, said I looked good. And as I was leaving, she was like, yeah, we're showing some frayability around the cuff. We did some biopsies, we'll see what they say. And I didn't know what frayability meant. So I Googled it.
And what does it tell you? Cancer, death?
Nothing good.
Nothing
So I read some research, because Google, obviously, it was quite a technical word. So Google obviously had no idea what it was. So I read some medical journals about it. And they were all just like, pouch failure, like these patients needed a colostomy bag very soon. Here are the percentage rates of pouch failure. And I'm freaking the fuck out.
To me, friability just means that it bleeds very easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically. And so I didn't know that.
Okay.
And so I spoke to my surgeon, my doctor, last week, and I said, oh, by the way, that friability on the cuff, like, what happened with that? Like, is that okay? Like, what does that mean? And she was just like, oh, it's fine. It's exactly what I expect. Your pouch looks absolutely fine. Like, it's healed very well. Like, I expect a certain amount with your condition. And I was just like, I have literally been losing sleep about this, your throwaway comment, for months now.
Yeah.
It's not her fault.
But this happens all the time. I've learned so much so I've been a doctor now for nearly a decade, but I've learned so much in that patients will latch on to specific, like, you have to be super careful with the things that we say, because, yeah, you're right, people latch on to the smallest thing, the smallest throwaway comment, something that you may not have even meant wholeheartedly. And I've seen this in practice in theatres, and like particularly during C-sections, when all that's separating the head of the person who's being operated on is like a thin blue sheet, and then there's space all around it, and they're awake because it's a C-section, and they can hear everything that we're saying.
Yeah.
And it's not me, it's like the surgeon, who the consultant who has talked about what a mess it has been inside because they've had multiple C-sections. So it's just like there's lots of scar tissue, very friable tissues that are bleeding really easily.
Yeah.
And he just keeps swearing under his breath. And I'm just there quiet thinking,
Shut the fuck up.
I was like, I don't even know what to say or do because I'm so junior at this point. And then there was obviously a massive complaint that came in against the consultant.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you've got a surgeon who's down there quietly going, oh, fuck, like, oh, shit. You're just thinking, like, what's happening? Yeah, I completely understand that. But yeah, it's... Living with this stuff is really hard. I genuinely think... I'm trying to rack my brain as to, like, what's the worst part of it. And I think it is feeling so isolated, alone, and as a result, feeling shame because you're not like everyone else. And then because of the shame, thinking you can't talk to anyone else about this stuff.
I'm sorry that you felt that way. There was another thing that lots of people comment in my videos is about the spoon theory.
Yeah.
Can you just explain that to everyone?
100%. I first saw this a couple of months ago and I was like, oh my God, that's so true. Basically, the spoon theory is, imagine your energy is represented in a number of spoons. And say you have 8 spoons that you can spend on doing things in a day. You have to judge how many spoons you have that day and how many spoons certain things will cost you. So, say you start with 8 spoons for the day. Doing the laundry, that's 4 spoons. Putting out the washing, that's another 3. Okay, so you're left with 1 for everything else for the rest of the day. And so it's essentially how you ration your energy when you have a chronic illness. And it's true. Like, one of the ways, I've told my mum this before, one of the ways you can judge how ill I'm feeling or how well I feel is how messy is my flat. Like, I keep my flat extremely clean. If it's not, I am not doing well.
Yeah, I mean, your bedroom when we were kids was spotless.
Yeah, exactly. Almost to the degree of being a psychopath.
Even to the point that there wasn't even though you were painting Warhammer, there was no paint on your table.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I remember once at uni, I kept like my knives in the drawer, like loose, but in like an order.
That you keep knives.
Who doesn't have kitchen knives? Not like machetes, Jesus. Yeah, I kept like a sword in the kitchen cabinet.
That's where my mind went.
Jesus. But yeah, I had a friend of mine come over and she like opened my drawer and she was like, Alex, are you a psychopath? Like, what is this? Because they're all like neatly arranged. It's just like, no, it's just neat.
See, a normal person just has like, I've got a wooden block, which has got 8 knives in it.
I was a student at the time. I can't afford all this wooden block nonsense. Jesus. But the spoon theory is 100% accurate. Like,
and is the number of spoons that you have on a given day different?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not, I have a chronic illness, I have less spoons than everyone else. It's, I have a chronic illness, the number of spoons I had yesterday is different to today. And you might lose a spoon or 2 in the day just because. Like...
And this is where the hour to hour, minute to minute fluctuations take precedence in it, right?
Exactly. Like, you just don't know how you're going to feel. And it goes back to planning. Like,
or even the ability not to plan, which is what you were mentioning earlier. You can't plan to go on holiday. You can't plan to go to festival when... Yeah. And in the world of social media, while it's giving you this community, it's also a constant reminder of just all the shit that you're just not able to do.
You're telling me.
And it sounds awful. And so, it's...
I mean, perfect example of this was, so altogether, I missed half my GCSEs. I had to repeat lower 6th or year 12, I had to repeat second year of uni. I had to have a year gap between my master's and my undergrad. So there's like 4 years of my life that's kind of just been taken, which is why I feel very behind compared to a lot of people. But I remember I had to graduate late from my undergrad. I had to graduate with the master's people in the winter. And so I had to watch all of my friends graduate. And then in the summer while I was doing exams, watch them all be together, like in Austria, having a great time. And then watch them all start jobs from bed. And I was just like, this is terrible. And like, yeah, I remember at the time, I like wanted to date a girl. And things were going well. I got really ill and she went off with someone else. And that just happens. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it sucks. And it happens a lot. And I don't say that for pity. I say that because people don't understand how much you lose and how much is taken from you having this stuff. I don't want to be all doom and gloom though for anyone who is watching this with a chronic illness, because it's not impossible. It just sucks and you have to deal with it. I think a lot of people with chronic illnesses forget. It sounds weird and counterintuitive, but you forget that you have to think more about what you can and can't do. And you also forget to be kind to yourself. Especially with, like, essentially this Conservative government for the last 14 years or whatever. A lot of people, you know, you hear all these stories all the time in the news about benefit scroungers or, you know, people who fake chronic illnesses or like all this kind of stuff. And it's demonizing people with chronic illnesses. And as someone with a chronic illness, it makes you not want even to admit to yourself that you have something wrong with you. I forget to be kind to myself because I can't do stuff. Like, I literally forget because we're all brainwashed into, like,
have to be productive.
Yeah.
Have to be efficient. Have to do everything, every opportunity that's presented in front of you.
Exactly. And when you can't physically do those things, you get the guilt, you get the shame, and it sucks. Especially when you lose opportunities that you really wanted, like in work or in love or in family stuff or whatever. And it sucks because people just don't get it. I'm just thinking about my dating life. It's terrible.
So where does the happiness come from?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I'll let you know when I find out. But no, it's about doing what you can, where you can, and understanding where you find joy in things. This is actually why Warhammer, especially for me, has been so amazing. I found a community. I found a place where, you know, I can indulge and do this thing with a bunch of people who also understand this thing. It's like having that shared common collective. And I think having a chronic illness means that you feel so isolated from so much of like culture and society that if you do find your community, that's one of the most important things ever. And also, I think people really underestimate, with chronic illnesses, really underestimate the degree to which you need to talk. You need to talk to someone. A perfect example, like a good friend of mine who he talked about earlier, who didn't tell his wife for a year what his condition was really like.
That must have taken such a huge emotional toll on him.
Yeah, because he's a fitness trainer. And, you know, we bonded and became friends through our shared love of like Dragon Ball Z and training and, you know, kickboxing and fighting, all this kind of stuff. And he literally said to me, I felt guilty because I was supposed to be this big, strong man. And I couldn't be that for my wife. I felt like I was lying to her because of my condition. That's a shit place to be in.
That's horrible.
Yeah. She knows everything now. But yeah, it goes back to the guilt and the shame. And it's something you have to acknowledge and think about. I might send this whole thing to my therapist.
Do you know what? I think that we've kind of covered everything. Thank you so much. You've been so open and it's been so insightful.
Yeah, it's been great to be here.
And so much of this, even like a lot of it I didn't even know.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
It's okay. Don't show this to my mum. Right, it's good to be here.